Hello, my name is Matt Doble. I'm one of the assistant principals at Preston School in Yeovil, and one of my roles is to oversee our GCSE Computer Science qualification. Now, I'm sure that you will not need me to tell you that your son or daughter is approaching a really important point in their life and their transition into adulthood. Rightly or wrongly, the exams that they sit this year will absolutely change their lives and will go a long way towards dictating the sorts of opportunities that their futures hold. Up until this point, we, between us, have probably been the decisive factor in how well your son or daughter has done. We as teachers have done our very best to provide the best lessons, the most interesting resources and subject-specific content. You as parents have reinforced that work at home. You've checked that homework is complete and that the morning alarm is always set. We're now at a point, however, where the emphasis really does switch onto the young people themselves. All of the research shows that the students that exceed their target grades are the ones that work the hardest at home, and that's the case regardless of whether the student has targets of 2s and 3s or 8s and 9s. I therefore wanted to take this opportunity to record a very short video in advance of the upcoming Parents' Evening to talk you through the sorts of support that your child has been provided with and the sorts of things that they should now be beginning to do at home in their own time. Hopefully this will be useful, and at the end I've provided my email address if you do have any other questions at all. Before we start, I guess it's important to understand how the GCSE Computer Science course is structured. Contrary to popular belief, the Computer Science GCSE is entirely assessed via pen and paper examinations. There are actually no computer elements involved at all when it comes to the final GCSE grade. While a computer might be useful for revision and particularly the research elements within a student's revision, it's certainly not necessary. So please don't accept the argument that students can't revise if they don't have access to a computer at home. The course is made up of 2 units, Unit 1 Computer Systems and Unit 2 Algorithms and Programming. Each one is a 1.5 hour GCSE paper, and this year Unit 1 sits on Friday the 18th of June with the Unit 2 paper 10 days later on Monday the 28th of June. Both of these papers are non-calculator, so all that we ask is that students turn up prepared with a pen, pencil, ruler and rubber on the day. So why do we need students to revise? Why don't they know it already? Why haven't I taught them well enough that they could now ace the exam tomorrow morning? Well, the concept of revision comes from something called the forgetting curve, and that's a piece of research into how human beings remember and recall key information. Right now, we're the red line on the graph on your screen. I'm giving you pieces of information, and you're hopefully sat taking most of it in. However, tomorrow, you'll remember about 50% of the things that I've said. The day after, about 30%, the day after that, 20%, and by days 4, 5 and 6, you'll maybe be remembering about 10% of the things that I've mentioned. Now that's no reflection on you, it's just the way that our brains are programmed to function, forgetting information over time that our brain doesn't think we need any longer. If, however, you recap some of the key things I've said tomorrow, you'll become the first green line on the graph. And you'll see there that the rate of forgetting is massively reduced, the curve is flatter, and that the content is forgotten at a much slower rate. If the content is then recapped again, after say a week, we become the second green line. You'll see the rate of forgetting is even flatter again, and we can recall much more of the key information for longer. The final green line shows if you recap that information again after say maybe 30 days. Now you'll notice at that point the vast majority of the information is retained with a very slow rate of forgetting. This is the point where the information has been transferred into our long-term memory. Now that's exactly the point that we need our students to reach before their exams. So in short, repetition of key points is absolutely the best way to remember them, and that is why we need our students to revise the things that we've been studying for the last couple of years, recapping, recalling key information so that all of that is submitted to their long-term memory by the time they come to sit their exams. So now that we know why revision is so vital, it's important that we look at how students can revise in the most effective way possible. I can remember being in year 11, my mum telling me that I needed to revise for 2 hours each night, and then sitting in my room staring at a book, taking in very little and watching the time pass by. The honest answer is that that type of revision is of very limited use, and we've now really moved on in terms of our understanding of how students can be most effective in their revision, getting the best bang for their buck in terms of each minute they revise and making sure that every minute transfers into marks in the final exam paper. An example is the piece of research displayed on your screen now, in which various revision techniques are looked at and categorised into either high, medium or low impact. As you'll see, lots of the stereotypical revision methods such as reading, highlighting, summarising all fall into the low impact category. Now, that doesn't mean that those can't be useful. They can, particularly when students are learning something for the first time. But in terms of committing the content to the long-term memory, it's important that students move beyond those methods. It may be, for example, when students are revising a particularly tough topic, they start with reading and highlighting, but they must then apply that through things like practice testing, which sits in the high effectiveness column. Now you'll see that distributed practice that we've already mentioned and the use of practice papers or tests both fall into the high impact category, and it's those techniques that we really need our students to be aiming for. Again, that doesn't mean students can't use the other techniques, particularly at the start of their revision. It just means that those techniques in isolation are probably not going to be enough for them to remember the content on the day. They need to be taking those points from the high effectiveness column and utilising those in their revision chunks that we'll come on to talk about in a moment. So having looked at the research, how should our young people start their revision? What is the thing they should be looking at doing over the next couple of weeks? The first step is to draw up a revision calendar or plan to split up each week. While I would love our students to revise computer science for months on end, that's not a particularly effective method. Students should have a calendar that allows every subject to be revised each week, ideally a number of times. They should then break their revision into half-hour chunks comprised of 25 minutes of revision, followed by a 5-minute break. Now again, the research shows that those breaks and chunks of different topics are really important if we want the information to be retained. An alternative model is to use 50-minute chunks with a 10-minute break, and that might be useful for students who are attacking longer answer questions where half an hour really isn't going to be enough. But anything over an hour is too long for students to retain unless there is that short break in between their revision chunks. Students often fall into the trap of revising the topics that they enjoy and therefore the ones that they actually understand fairly well already. It's really important that students tackle the topics they struggle with the most. Their revision should be about filling gaps in their knowledge and not patting themselves on the back for knowing everything already. It's really important they focus on the things they do not know. Finally, it's vital they write things down. Be it creating revision mats, mind maps, flashcards or practice questions, the process of writing words on a page is really important for committing our study to memory. Students should be able to show you the physical thing that they have created at the end of each study block. And I would hugely encourage families to ask their young people to share those as part of the evening revision process. So with all of that in mind, on your screens now is my suggested revision model to allow students to revise every subject in a fair, equitable way, blocking them and spreading them out across a number of months and making sure that every topic is revised effectively. Now that is by no means the best model, it's certainly not the only one, and it will most likely need tweaking for individual circumstance, but it should get you to a point where we understand the sorts of work that your student, your son or daughter should be undertaking at home from January at the very latest. So for me, students should be undertaking 2 hours of revision a night throughout the week from January onwards. If they split that each night into 4 half-hour blocks, they're able to revise every subject at least twice a week with additional slots available for English, Maths, Science, or the subjects they think are going to be most important for their college applications. In the first revision block, for each subject each week, students should revise a new topic, and that's going to be the topics that are given to them in their revision calendar, and I'm calling that topic A. The revision calendar has been provided by every single subject leader at the school and is available for students on the portal, and it tells them exactly what they need to revise for each subject each week. Now, as part of that, they should create some form of revision materials, for example, a mind map or a revision flashcard. Then in the second block for each subject each week, students should undertake some practice testing, some practice questions or a past paper on a given topic. And that should be what I'm calling topic B, and that's the topic that they revised the week before. Now, that should include them undertaking a question, marking it, and then undertaking any corrections that they need to from the mark scheme. Now, doing that meets the requirement of that distributed practice that we looked at earlier, that idea of recapping something one week and going back over it then the following week. And if students follow that model, they should from January have time to practice every single topic in 1 week and then test it in the following week. On the next slide, I'm going to show you a potential revision calendar that would allow students then to meet that model. So here is my quick example revision calendar. So I've split each night into 4 slots, and each slot has a minimum of a 5-minute break between the different revision blocks. Now clearly the timings here are flexible. Students can set the times whenever they want based on their extracurricular activities. What I have done though is kept all of the blocks on a Monday to Friday, leaving the weekends free. Now, there are lots of variations of that. Students could do 2 a night during the week and then do more on the weekend. But if they know, for example, they play football on a Sunday and won't have any time, this sort of model shouldn't stop them from being able to do that over the coming months. What I've then done is assigned each subject into a block, and each subject appears at least twice each week, with maths, English and science appearing on a couple of additional occasions. Obviously those are key GCSEs for most of our students, but students could replace the third science block, for example, with computer science if they knew that was a subject they were struggling with or particularly needed for their college application. So in the first computer science block, computer science sits in option block A, so a student would revise that on a Monday from 4:30 to 4:55. And in that first block, they would revise topic A. Topic A is the topic given to them in their revision calendar for the given week. They'd revise that, they'd create some flashcards, they'd read through their revision guide, and maybe talk you as a parent through what they've created. Their second computer science block for the week is then on a Wednesday from 6:30 to 6:55. And in that slot, they would undertake a past paper or a set of past questions around topic B. Topic B being the topic they revised the week before. They'd undertake the past question, they'd mark it, they'd do any corrections, and again, they should better talk you through their answers, the mistakes they made, and the revision they've then done on the back of it. Now, by doing that every week, students will have time to revise every single topic, plus then test it the following week, and be able to do that for every single subject that they study. Now, again, this is not set in stone. Students can adapt this as they need. It's just a potential model to allow them to revise everything for every subject in a fairly fair way. So we've tried to provide as much as we can for computer science students in terms of resources to help with that. My view is that students shouldn't be spending their time finding past papers. That's my job. They should be spending their time doing it. And over the next couple of minutes, I'm just going to talk you through where on Google Classroom students will find a wide variety of work, including past papers, revision activities, and riveting revision videos like this one that I've attempted to record. I've also purchased for students things like the CGP guide, which I'll just quickly recap at the end. So all of the revision resources that I provide for students are available via Google Classroom. Google Classroom is something that students have used in my class nearly every lesson for the last 3 years, so please don't accept the argument that any student doesn't know how to access this. They log into the portal with their normal login details, they click Google Classroom, and it immediately appears having logged them in automatically. On this page, they will find things like the course overview, and inside of course overview, students will find their revision calendar for computer science. They can click on that one to load that up, and this provides them with every single topic they need to revise, plus a date by which it needs to be done. So for example, the purpose of the CPU is the first key topic, and as part of that, students need to know these 3 key pieces of information. They need to have revised that by the 8th of January. So when students are writing up their revision schedules, this gives them a date by which that needs to be completed. They'd revise this within that first slot, and then that would be noted down as the topic needing to be tested the following week. By the 13th of January, students need to have completed these key topics, revising those and then testing them the following week. Now, I've tried to divide those into week blocks as much as possible. Later on in the revision process, there are more than one topic sets per week. It'll be at that point that students need to focus in on the bits they don't know. Not all of these things will need revising for every single student. There should be many of these that they know already. This is the point where they need to pick out the things they need to focus on and really focus their time on those. What it should do, though, is give them a bit of a tick list. A tick list they can go through the night before the exam and think, yes, I know that. Yes, I know that. This is a topic I need to maybe cram and really focus in on before the exam. So that's within the overview section of Google Classroom, and that's available to all students. They've then got a range of past papers split into Unit 1 with all of the papers and the mark scheme, and then Unit 2. Students can go into a paper, print that if required, complete the practice questions, and then find the relevant mark scheme to help them mark it. For some of the papers, I've also undertaken a model answer. Those are exam papers that I've undertaken in as student-friendly language as possible that they can use to go through and think, this is maybe how an example student would answer this paper to get a grade 9. Finally, in the overview section are a range of generic revision materials. Now, these are quite lengthy documents, but can be really useful for students wanting some additional revision or some additional support. So, for example, if we go into our learning grid, students are provided with a range of key terms and can then have a range of questions about each one. Now, these could be printed, for example, and students can undertake one of those each morning before they leave the house. They're quick fire questions to assist with their revision, and they've got sort of 50 or so pages of those. There are also additional topic tests, which are like past papers, but created by third-party companies. Students have then got all of the revision materials. So every single topic has been put onto Google Classroom, and students have got within those lesson PowerPoints, videos, and activities. So for example, in topic 1.1, if a student was struggling with CPU performance, they can click the CPU performance section. They've got My Lesson, a PowerPoint version of that, plus then a video from another school teaching the same topic if they're not really grasping the way I'm explaining that topic. They should then have everything they need to revise, and that's in place for every single topic. Under every single heading is at least one material that students can use to revise, and under many of those there are, for example, My Lesson, plus then a number of different videos. At the end of each topic, there's another revision materials section, and that covers all of the topics within that element of the curriculum. In short, students should have plenty to revise from. There are lesson PowerPoints from me, videos from other teachers, if they're really unlucky, videos from me, and then practice questions and past papers. There should never be a scenario where students are saying, I don't know how to revise, because there is a wide array of materials and things provided for them on Google Classroom. If students struggle with any of that, obviously tell them to get in touch with me. I can explain those at any point. But these are things we've been using for the last 3 years, so they should all know these are in place, and we have been through these in our recent lessons. So finally, I have purchased for every single student 3 different revision materials that they should have access to now at home. They've all been purchased: the CGP Revision Guide, which is the blue book on your screen. Now that should be able to help them revise any topics that they're struggling with. They've then been purchased the Practice Questions book, which is the white booklet in the middle of your screen. That gives a number of practice questions for every single topic on the GCSE. So while they've got past papers, if students are wanting a set of questions on one particular topic, that book is going to be really, really useful for them. Finally, they've got a set of flashcards, and that's on the right-hand side of your screen. That is a set of 67 flashcards, a little sort of A6-sized flashcard on all of the key topics that may come up in the GCSE. The flashcard gives them a range of key content that they'll need, and on the reverse, then a set of practice questions. Now, like I say, I've purchased that for every single student. They should have those. If for any reason they've lost them, the ISBN numbers are listed on your screen, and you can buy them from Amazon for about sort of £5 a copy. Hopefully this video has been of some use. Like I say, I really wanted to record this in advance of the parents' evening to get out of the way some of the questions that I might be answering quite a lot of times on the evening. If you have any additional questions at all, please don't hesitate to get in touch with me via the email that I've sent you. Like I say, hopefully this has been in some way useful in terms of supporting your son or daughter's revision over the next couple of months. And from everyone at the school, I would like to thank you for your support, both now and in the previous 5 years, in terms of ensuring your son or daughter really does gain the best outcomes next August. Thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video, and goodbye.